Good day to you all, Asakor is with you, and today I will briefly tell you about all the heroes in Mobile Hero Wars, and you will understand how actual or irrelevant heroes are as of June 2023, and why exactly so. Only the most important thing about all 62 heroes in less than 50 minutes. Let's go. For 3 years I have been actively watching all changes and balance of heroes in general, making videos on the subject, and just in the past year meta in our game has changed very significantly, and it changed because of the fact that in our game introduced a number of interesting characters as well as changed quite a few old, which in turn indirectly raised all other heroes in rankings. Therefore, a year later, I feel it necessary to share again a new, most objective view of our game and its balance at the moment. After all, this rating was created not only by me, but also by the strongest players in our game, including foreigners, those who have most of the heroes at maximum pumping. It is also worth noting that we will be talking about heroes on maximum pumping because the disclosure of the character is directly related to his power. Soon you will see that this work on that video was done enormous, so I have the simplest request to you: subscribe to my channel and like this video. Let's try to get 5,000 likes here, and we'll start the review. All characters are conventionally divided into several categories or tiers, primarily by the criteria of versatility and effectiveness. Tier G are completely unnecessary characters. When removed from the game, no one will notice it, and these are the characters that claim to rebalance in the first place, and opens our ranking Kai, Elf Mage, who was introduced to the game at the very beginning of its one of the first heroes. He may have been used at the very beginning in 2016 due to the lack of alternatives, but in 2023 many people do not even know about the existence of this hero, and there's a reason for that. After all, his abilities do penny damage and only recharge his opponent, and 100% vampirism he absolutely does not need, because there are simply no scenarios where it can save his life. Qing Mao is a penetrator warrior with ability to lower armor of his nearest opponent more and more, as well as to briefly blind, repel, and take away some of his health. That all sounds interesting, but what this miss does is follow her ultimate, so she has a very short lifespan, and her 320,000 health is no good as she gets wiped out quickly on the front line. Elmir is another penetrator warrior with ability to switch to long-range marksman. He has the ability to create clones of himself, which do almost no damage. All would be fine, but for the theme of clones devoted as much as 3 Elmir's skills, and the output from them almost zero, only weaken FPS and make the game more times to drop out because of the large number of objects on the battlefield. Temporarily closing Penetrator's topic, Fox falls into the same category. Her main problem is the same as Elmir's: lack of any damage and any other useful abilities. The knockback, blinding and stun for 5 seconds from the ultimate could have been interesting if it did not fly at the nearest opponent, which is often a dense tank, and you still have to live up to ultimate itself because her second ability recharges in 15 seconds and the useless third one in 5 seconds. Fourth skill is passive, is only in addition to heavy caliber, and has no effect on Fox's energy gain rate. Arachne, mage at the second position, has in her arsenal of 2 abilities with stun, but they work only on the closest opponents, and teleport though applied to the hero with the lowest current health, but deals fairly little damage by modern standards of meta mages. I'm not even talking about the damage of neurotoxin. Having 80% built-in vampirism is pretty cool, but why do we need it when all the abilities don't do any significant damage? The question remains open. Markus is a support hero on the front line with morally obsolete healing abilities. The amount and method of healing from them is rather primitive, and the shield from ultimate, which allows you to block all incoming damage, works for only 5 seconds, which is very little. And Markus himself, if you use him in the first position as a tank, notwithstanding his decent armor score, categorically lacks health and armor artifact. Yes, and the form of spirit after death with ability to apply skills is not of interest. because in it he loses the ability to use first skill. Heidi is an unusual mage whose abilities deal pure damage, thus ignoring defense against magic parameter. However, he is still hardly used by anyone due to his extremely weak damage figures from all of his skills. For example, his ultimate does 38,700 damage in 3 seconds, while Aiden's ult for reference does 57,200 damage to all his allies in 8 seconds. Fourth skill allows him to dodge the opponent's attacks. Only the fact is that Heidi is about in the middle of all the heroes, and this fact calls into question the practicality of this skill. Ishmael is a frontline warrior whose specifics are built around inflicting damage from his hand. If he stops attacking for even a second, it is a bad sign, because his energy and ultimate drops very quickly and there is no saving either evasion or vampirism. At this point in our game, there are a lot of heroes with good control who, at the snap of a finger, calm this beast down. Tier D, these are two situational characters to use, and it's hard to use them. Meyer is another mage whose abilities are built around pure damage, but unlike Heidi, she already deals same damage. Also has a control in the form of numbness and pulling two opposing characters to each other, which in some cases is extremely useful. Only her current problem is the extremely low reserve of armor and general vulnerability on the front row. Often the roots and flowers of this young lady are sawn out rather quickly, and everyone has long since learned how to shed the negative effects. Satori is a mystic mage who is designed to fight against energy manipulators. His basic attacks and abilities allow him to cast marks, and by ultimating he unleashes them, creating foxes that deal damage, especially those heroes who get extra energy because Satori puts a handful more marks on them. These are such heroes as Georgian, Andvari, Kar, Orion, Tristan, Phobos, and Mojo. This is all in theory, but in practice in the current balance situation, Satori is very difficult to play, for example, because of engineers who reset those very marks and iris, which begins to deal damage to the one who imposes these marks. And against normal teams, everything will depend on his ultimate because he plays from it. But not always he will be able to use it even against energy manipulators, which is quite a shame. Ju is a frontline marksman with ability to attack the opponent's back row, sacrificing a percentage of his health and converting it to pure damage, and his ultimate allows him to temporarily speed up and not die. This skill set has become very useful on Hydra, but in battles against heroes, it is now extremely rare for the back row to be vulnerable. This factor breaks strategy of using Ju as a main damage dealer. Thea is healer of the last position and can periodically heal one hero with the least current health or all at once with her ultimate, the same time slightly speeding up the cured targets by 4 seconds due to the passive skill. Also knows how to cast silence on all opponents, which works well against mages, but unfortunately this set is not enough to compete with the more advanced healers, and the performance of Thea's treatment itself from her two abilities is quite modest. Galahad is positioned as a tank, but in reality it is a first-line warrior whose skills are sharpened for physical attack and therefore for inflicting significant damage. It is almost never necessary to use this character now, as there are many independent damage dealers in our game, capable of dealing large amounts of damage much better than Galahad with proper support. Yes, and at the moment valued such tanks, which as long as possible will hold the first row, and if anyway, will delay the battle as long as possible, plus help their abilities to shift the damage to themselves. Kar is an interesting warrior with the ability to deal quite a bit of damage to victims who are tossed into the air. He's also able to do this himself with his ultimate, plus his second skill allows him to block physical attacks and get extra energy for it. But Kar as a hero has some serious flaws. The first disadvantage is a very low health reserve, and he is quite close to the allied tank, almost first row away, which makes him very vulnerable. And the second disadvantage is the presence of obvious counter picks, such as Andvari or Xe'Sha. Kar is very afraid of any control, because virtually all of his activities in one way or another depends on the ultimate. Dante is probably the most unusual marksman, using dodge manipulation as his main trick. In fact, he doesn't deal much damage, and his abilities are focused on dodging and pushing back with his ultimate and passive third skill. Dante periodically raises his whole team's dodging rate, but the usefulness of the amount of giveaway is now quite low and is often only used in defense as an element of randomness. His unpopularity is explained by the fact that in our game the theme of dodging is still undiscovered. For example, only 3 heroes have the first artifact with this effect: Dante himself, Useless Heidi, and Aurora. Perhaps in the future we should expect changes in this direction, but so far the need for dodges is very low. In the meantime, we move on and go up to Tier S, category of situational characters, which are rarely used and are extremely demanding of the situation. Here we also meet Celeste, a mystic healer with a unique mechanic of applying ultimate at the moment of reaching 50% of energy. For balance purposes, she also had the duration of effect of magical attack from the first artifact reduced by half, but still her early distribution only plays into the hands of the mages in Celeste's team. Healing as well as banning healing as well as magical base attacks coupled with high penetration act as her advantages, and as a serious disadvantage, health reserve equal to 176,000. It's a disaster for a mage like Celeste, especially since she becomes a second or less often a third line where it's easier to get her, and yet she can sometimes be seen in a better light, especially in attacking lineups. Dark Star is a 4th position marksman with interesting controls, such as temporarily banning the use of boosting abilities with ultimate and luring the closest opponent to his side, forcing him to attack his own allies for 5 seconds. This archer is also armed with an extra arrow that hits the opponent with the least current health, which can be useful in a reaching. Her weakness is the distribution of the mark with 4th skill, which on the one hand increases damage from elves by 30%, but on the other hand makes Dark Star extremely vulnerable to Iris, because her health is very low at 168,000, plus her own physical damage is not enough, and such marksmen are not in fashion these days, but this does not make her completely useless. Helios was once the Terminator against crit heroes, holding the title of the best hero against physic heroes with critical hits. Previously, he could easily deal with any damage dealers, dealing a huge amount of damage with the help of counter damage from spheres and flaming retribution. But after introduction of Fafnir and general strengthening of all physic heroes, a lot has changed. Now Helios is far from being a guarantee against physic heroes, but in fully conceptual attack teams he can still give the heat even to meta damage dealers. Jed is original mage, associated with players primarily with the hero, whose main function is to distribute the parameter chance of a critical hit to all allies in the team. To have the ability to inflict critical attacks at the beginning of the battle is really useful, because not all physic heroes have such a parameter in the characteristics. However, instead of him, albeit after a while, the same Julius can give out crits with first artifact, and the other abilities Jet is not so interesting. That's why he's not as popular, and instead players prefer to see another support hero in their team for physic heroes. Which one? It will become clear further in the review. Cornelius is a mage who is pure anti-mage by nature of ability. He periodically creates a dome for all allies, increasing their defense against magic by 6 seconds, often saving characters' lives against serious tempo mages. Also, his monolith, especially under armor penetration, is able to remove most mages from the battlefield instantly, and the reduction of magic attack with the debuff on first skill level reduction only complements the concept of grandfather as the main hater of mages. His such a pronounced focus against them at the same time means absolute uselessness against physic heroes, so it is almost unreal to use him in defense, but in offensive, he is really good. Daredevil is a 4th position marksman, a lady with a Uzi with which she makes 5 attacks on the nearest opponent at once, and during normal auto attacks she makes one additional attack after a successful attack of an ally behind her. Also in her arsenal is a bomb with massive physical damage, and the ability to increase her physical attack after the same each crit. That's why she's so good against Hydras and in protracted battles against heroes when supported decently. Her damage is tunneled and predictable. Daredevil can't surprise her opponent with a sudden amount of damage, which many people know and take advantage of. Tier B characters close to average, who find scenarios in auxiliary use, but who lack something to make players pay attention to them in the first place, and opens this category Aurora, a unique in her kind tank, the strength of which is based not on a large index of armor and protection from magic, but on dodge. Compensates for her lack of magical protection halo, which blocks 80% of magic damage, and against physic heroes have 14,000 armor and 8,000 dodge. Not to say it's much, but she also doesn't fallen down in 1 second, because with help of ultimate, Aurora deals herself and all allies an effect from the first artifact on dodge, potentially becoming stronger against physic heroes. On the whole, it's not bad, but it's certainly not the best tank in mobile hero wars. The only thing that saves her is the fact that she is in the strong faction of Path of Nature, and therefore always covered by Alvanor, but more on that later. Kitty Lian is a mage with interesting control mechanics, with which she puts her opponents to sleep and can deal some damage to them while they are asleep. She is interesting to combine with heroes that deal a lot of damage per second time, and with heroes that have their own control in the form of, for example, stuns. Good to cover the back row and can also help stop a tempo team with mass damage, but in all other cases, her relevance in a team is not necessary. Astrid and Lucas are historically a special 4th position marksman who has no energy scale, and instead has Fury installed. She doesn't get it in return for incoming damage and kills, but each auto attack by Astrid adds 25% to her supply, plus 25% from the start of combat. In most cases, in a properly lined up team with her, Astrid will release her beastie when she reaches 100% Fury, which will tank on the front row for a while and deal some damage. In all, she is quite a specific hero with both advantages and disadvantages, but she feels really good inside engineers and can even surprise. Martha is a backline healer with really decent healing, is strong on her own, and has a useful ultimate that speeds up the whole team. In today's reality, she's still a good healer, but she can't keep up with the pace of teams that do nothing but increase their damage or rapidly gain energy. The slow auto attack speed and long reload time of a single active skill make it impossible for Granny to ultimate, and the acceleration of Martha is her main trump card. But now she often does not have time to use it, so many players abandon her in favor of more aggressive or defensive characters. Dorian is a support hero with specific healing abilities. They are tied to vampirism and especially to his aura. Dorian's presence in a team provides the back rows with passive treatment from their attacks or damage abilities. In some cases you really can't do without him, but in other cases he is absolutely unnecessary and better to give priority to another hero, because Vampire, except for these healing functions, does not carry any more meaningful load. Peppy is a charming sorceress with elements of control and interesting damage mechanics. A shield applied to the first ally in the front row of a team can deal a ton of damage if used on a character who either takes damage frequently or deals it himself frequently. Among such characters are, for example, Cleaver or Kayla. Peppy is also interesting because of her various ultimate controls and her third skill with stun, which can do double or quadruple damage. Overall, sounds pretty curious, but she doesn't work against everyone and has a lot of counter picks. Lilith is a magical back position marksman with a wide soul and great power stats that give her over 600,000 health at maximum pumping, able to increase in size, becoming even more elastic in the area of magic attack and the same health. has a double auto attack on the middle of the opponent's team and lowers their defense against magic. By all criteria, this demoness is very good, but she always needs a little more time to prove herself, and in the present realities she may lack it. Tier A, the middle tier or balance benchmark. Here we are greeted by Chabba, a fat elf tank that swallows anything and anyone. His second skill, Burp, speaks volumes and is the most random in our game. With it, this dragon strikes a random opponent every 7 seconds, slowing him down for 4 seconds. And because of this, the battles with Chabba on the team always go differently. This becomes especially noticeable when he is used in Fafnir teams. Also, the additional armor, proportionally layered when you lose health, makes Chabba even more dense tank, which is ready to absorb a lot of damage. Alvanor is a key support hero for elves, allowing them to heal under Rune of Life 2 times stronger from any source. But the most important skill in his arsenal is Aura with Earth Rune, which for elves passively reduces damage from opponents' base attacks by more than 41,000. This ability makes Path of Nature tangibly denser, especially useful at the beginning of the battle when basic hit exchange phase passes, and during this time neither the tank nor the hero at any position suffers. And to use Alvanor completely without elves obviously makes little sense. Ziri is the most armored tank in our game. Not only has 770,000 health, but also has 40,000 armor. The number of this indicator is the most top among all the heroes in our game. Also owns a rather interesting skill, reflecting the incoming physical damage, and an interesting ultimate, provoking to attack Ziri, and she also increases by 150% her already powerful armor and protection from magic. Of course, what makes this tank super tough is the third ability, which allows Ziri to hide underground for 7 seconds with a 15-second cooldown, avoiding enemy attacks and recovering health if it has dropped below 30%. The choice always falls on this tank if you fighting against very tempo physical compositions, but unfortunately against the top mages she does not live long. Rufus is an extremely specific and interesting tank with low armor, huge health, and impossibility to die from pure or magic damage because of his passive fourth ability. These factors force mages to reckon with him, avoiding attacks on him, or doing so with the help of physic heroes or Morrigan. This makes him interesting in Grand Arena or inter-server battles, where one has the choice of attacking 3 teams. He's also good on offense when there's a need to absorb a lot of magic damage right at the start of combat. Andvari is half tank, half warrior with control and support elements. Compared to usual tanks of the first position, he has slightly lower health and protection from magic, but with armor thanks to the super skin he is alright. This sometimes allows you to put him as the main tank forward, covering other heroes with control, because Andvari's stuns come in handy in battles against the same tempo physic heroes, and shield from 4th skill will help your ally with the lowest armor score at the right time, and also give extra energy. Also, while Andvari is alive, he protects all allies behind him from the effects of moving and flipping, which is always useful to have as a bonus. It's not always needed, but in some scenarios he's as really good as any other. Keira is a marksman with a ricochet auto attack that allows her to deal damage to all opponents from the beginning of battle, acceleration of 290%, and an ultimate that deals damage and silence for 4 seconds. In this regard, very decent show yourself against mages with low health, as well as against teams with a large number of targets inside her, such as Morrigan's skeletons, or against mushrooms of Mushy. But fighting physic heroes can be hard. Lars and Krista are a tandem of powerful mages with plenty of different negative effects on their opponents, with which they can destroy them in seconds with good support and the overall vulnerability of defending team. Lars successfully fights a large number of targets with chain lightning and stuns nearby opponents with upper lightning while pulling everyone to the edge of the map with storm. At that time, Krista suggests that they make this trek over her spikes, which do damage when the victims move. Plus, she herself has a powerful ultimate that does noticeable damage, while simultaneously lowering their defense against magic and hiding in the ice from potentially powerful damage. At the moment they are good in attack, but vulnerable in defense. We will follow the development of the situation. Orion is a mage penetrator with an attractive ability for tempo magic teams to quickly build up the tempo of combat. After all, he is able to recharge with auto attacks, which do not bring 10% energy, but 60% at once thanks to the fourth passive skill Full Charge. First skill fires 6 missiles that do good damage, but what really matters is that he gives out effect by first artifact to his whole team to magic penetration. As we found out, Orion does this quite often, so many aggressive magic teams will only be glad to have such a fiery support in their team. But on the flip side, it can play against him if he fights a knowingly anti-magic team. Tier S, tier of strong meta characters with great potential and a vast field of application. Starting with this range, all the characters that are in it exactly worth pumping. But it is important to note that you need to focus on certain teams because all to pump very expensive. Astaroth proudly opens this category. Great tank with a lot of useful features. Among them, one-time resurrection of yourself or a fallen ally, transferring to yourself from the ally with the lowest health sum of physical damage they receive, as well as periodically burning some of the accumulated energy of the farthest opponent. This tank is so versatile that you can recommend him to every novice player. He will fit into almost any team, and with all the heroes on maximum pump, experienced players are happy to return to using Astaroth. And there's a reason for that. Isaac. He is in fact a marksman, but he is positioned as a support hero for physic heroes, but fully works exactly with engineers. His arsenal includes targeting drones, which greatly increase physical attack, and armor penetration for him and allies behind him, as well as defensive drones, which Isaac uses to shield himself and allies in the front. Such a shield absorbs physical and magical damage, and engineers receive healing until it is broken. Of particular interest is his ultimate, which, combined with passive fourth skill, does a lot of damage, repulses all opponents, and temporarily lowers their armor. Plus, Isaac himself can deal a fair amount of damage with auto attacks, especially if Nebula is standing next to him. Nebula is a special support hero with no base attacks. They are converted into positive effects for neighboring allies, which significantly increase physical attack by 70,000 and magic attack by 112,000. This ability literally transforms the hero standing next to her, giving them the ability to deal an incredible amount of damage from both base attacks and ultimate. Improving physical and magic attack in this way, she indirectly improves many abilities of neighboring allies where these parameters are involved, so even an inconspicuous ult can deal unprecedented damage. Periodic mini healing, removal of negative effects, and an ult that burns energy from opponents makes Nebula useful not only in engineers, but also with many other mages and physic heroes. Snake Yasmine is one of the most dangerous and unpleasant damage dealers in our game. She has the fastest base attack speed because she does not have any active ability except ultimate, therefore, in almost every battle she is guaranteed to use it, and attack the weakest opponent on armor parameter, and quickly cut him in 7 hits with a considerable amount of total damage. After applying the first ability, she activates an additional effect for herself to increase her chances of crit attack and dodging with the second skill, and the third and fourth skills give Yasmine's critical hits a layered poison, increasingly inflicting pure damage on the victim and partially blocking her healing. Very strong against weakly defended teams in general, and is able to fight effectively against mages as well as many physic heroes. Corvus and Morrigan are the most effective combination of undead, instilling terror in every hero who is not prepared to deal with them quickly and boldly. Corvus is a tank, but it's not his defensive characteristics that make him strong in the first place. It's his altar, which attacks his opponents every time they do damage to allied heroes. The characters that suffer the most are those that deal a lot of damage in a second of time, or those characters that deal intermittent damage for a few seconds. These are characters such as Yasmine, Lian, Dorian, Helios, Maya, and others. Corvus is primarily an attacking tank. His second skill, which temporarily increases physical and magical attack of allied Eternity heroes, makes him even more tempo, but he also has one defensive ability in the form of the fourth skill, which transfers an ally with less than 20% health to the center of his team. Overall, this is a very unconventional tank that is sure to find use in a trio of attack teams. He is most often paired with Morrigan. She acts in the roles of healer and support, and her abilities are very closely tied to the skeletons. Skeletons by themselves do almost no damage even in spite of the first artifact Morrigan, with armor penetration effect, and have little health. But when there are a lot of them, they are useful for the third skill called Empathy, by which part of the damage received by allies is evenly distributed among all the skeletons. Morrigan is also able to slightly heal, increase armor, and magic protection to all allies, particularly undead themselves, with twice the power. And when an opponent's hero dies, she creates a skeleton out of him, and when you try to resurrect him, she also gets one charge, with which she can resurrect her ally herself. In general, Morrigan is a very important and valuable hero, not only in a team with Corvus, but also as an independent support hero if the situation requires it. Iris is a powerful sorceress with permanent invulnerability to the effects of weakening. She herself is able to weaken the defense against the magic of opponents and inflict tangible periodic damage to those characters who use marks. Among them are Satori, Astrid and Lucas, Darkstar, Lars and Krista, Mojo, and others. They suffer greatly against her, especially when faced with her ultimate, which, when clapped, damages all opponents and then kills anyone with little health left. Iris is the kind of mage that, when attacked, one can definitely say that she cannot be ignored. Phobos is without a fraction of a doubt the best anti-mage of our game, pumping all of the opponent's energy to himself, a negative effect on reducing his defense against magic, and a powerful ultimate that does a lot of damage and burns up the victim's energy is what makes Phobos a real nightmare for many mages. In addition, all of his abilities prioritize the hero with the highest magical attack. But that doesn't mean that a fully physical team is completely safe from him, because he'll still be pumping energy from them, quickly going on an ult and permanently stunning the target until someone knocks him down. Phobos is objectively a very good character, one of those who starts to work even on very little pumping. Xe'Sha is the most useful support mage of chaotic heroes, with a basic magical attack, wielding abilities that are tied to the health sacrifices of allies, allows you to powerfully upgrade your magic attack and the magic attack of all your allies over the course of combat, and Deadly Ray deals infinite damage if the battle against her is very delayed. Any mages who lack damage, and especially chaotic ones, will welcome her. Mushy is a natural sorceress with the ability to duplicate her shroom, with up to 5. They have the ability to use all the other skills of their boss except ultimate, namely, creating mushrooms that deal damage and impose silence, as well as throwing seeds whose damage increases inadequately depending on the healing received by allies. Sometimes it happens that Mushy herself dies and the shrooms win the battle for her. A very pacey hero who, if you don't keep up, you're very likely to lose, especially when you consider that it is Mojo himself who sets the pace for her. Shaman is extremely fast at gaining energy for ultimate due to his freakish abilities. So, for example, when he heals, he immediately receives 30% of energy plus Wrath of the Spirit's charge. If the allies were completely cured by this ability, then they will also receive energy in the amount of 10%. And passive skill hacks is not passive at all, because for every 2-second trigger, Mojo receives 10% of energy. Plus, if the opponents have someone who burns or steals energy, He will launch skulls into him without recharging, stunning the victim and causing damage to her, which increases proportionally from the number of charges. And his ultimate allows Shaman to shoot charges that hit the two closest rivals with magical damage. Duration of this skill also increases for each accumulated charge. Having magic penetration distributed immediately after use of ultimate gives a green signal to Mojo himself and Sane Mushy or any other mage to inflict the maximum amount of magic damage. Some call Shaman a magical Tristan, and for good reason, because he is approximately as fast in gaining energy. Luther is an unsurpassed tank, able to break into the opponent's team without fear, stun it, and distract the attention of several heroes in every possible way, while his allies accumulate energy for ults. He has decent indicators of health, armor, and protection from magic. He is especially good both in his way of honor and in many aggressive teams, whose strategy is based on battles, the decisive moment of which is the exit to the ults. Luther is a master of distracting the attention of the opponent's heroes to himself. By jumping, he wins a lot of time, which of course is an undeniable advantage if there is no one to counter him. But in the meantime, Luther distracts rivals with himself. Then we have an tier SS on review, tier of the most versatile and powerful characters that set the meta of our game, and opens this highest category of course Fafnir. Perhaps this is the most revolutionary support hero for any physic hero ever introduced and existed. He easily eclipsed Sebastian and Jet's bundle, showing that even without crits, physic heroes are able to inflict a huge amount of damage. His uniqueness as a support hero for physic heroes lies in the basic attacks, which are switched from dealing damage to forging a shield, the volume of which only increases over the course of the battle. However, at the same moment, the shield is activated only after the hero loses more than 75% of the maximum health, which is also important, because many shields simply do not allow you to exchange health for energy, which is so important for development of pace and fight as a whole. Also, this shield is able to leave one unit of health to the hero under it in the event that the incoming damage exceeds the maximum health of the shield owner, which saves in a large number of situations and radically changes the course of the battle. Fafnir still has quite a few advantages, which is worth the passive fourth skill, which allows you to stun opponents whose armor has been completely penetrated. So also ultimate, which stuns all rivals and distributes a shield to all allies in the volume that was forged for the damage dealer, plus a positive effect on physical attack is superimposed on top, and his first artifact has the same effect. It is difficult to convey the emotions of using Fafnir to those people who do not have him yet. You need to try him yourself. Another one hero of honor who makes up a full-fledged bundle with Fafnir and in himself is the most useful penetrator. This is Tristan. His exceptional advantage over all other physical penetrators is a quick exit to ultimate and, consequently, distribution of the effect on armor penetration to all allies. After all, every time an ally in front of Tristan receives energy, Tristan receives the same amount of energy. It's not hard to guess that the more tanks in front of him, the faster and more often he ultimates. But there is simply no need for more than 2 tanks, and besides, he gives himself and them an additional physical attack, making them heroes themselves capable of inflicting any sane damage. Also an amazing addition thanks to the third skill is the burning of energy to the hero with the highest penetration rate of protection from magic. In addition, he himself can cause significant damage if the situation requires it. In general, Tristan is good in all respects, including health. He has more than 540,000 in stock, which makes him a strong hero, and this is really important for a warrior who is in the near ranks. Artemis is truly the most devastating marksman in the game. An infinitely growing number of arrows from ultimate, smart arrow, each time hitting a random opponent, and sometimes sometimes causing impossible numbers of damage, as well as passive skill, which increases her physical attack due to the total health of allies from the very beginning of the battle, combined with built-in crit. That's all that makes this archer unsurpassed in her role. Players attacking the team with her always have a sinking heart when she swings at ultimate. Artemis and Fafnir team is exceptionally good, is out of competition, and will be in it for an unknown amount of time. Cleaver is the most versatile tank for all occasions. Increased health reserve from the 4th skill, decent armor and protection from magic, as well as the built-in 55% vampirism allows him to keep the first line as long as possible. He is also able to stun the heroes in the front line area, which has a positive effect on their energy intake. Hook that attracts the farthest opponent completely breaks the formation of the team, and if it is some kind of sickly hero, it is quickly taken away by your damage dealers, making -1 for only one of this action. Very good in both physical and magical compositions. This is another one strongest tank from the category I put and forgot. He can be used in virtually any team, and you will be satisfied. It's a pity you can't get Cleaver just like that. Julius is literally and figuratively the most progressive modern tank with a bunch of useful functions. I will list a few of them. A barrier for the whole team, healing, periodic increase in their physical attack, which means an indirect increase in durability of shields for themselves and their allies. Bonus to armor and protection from magic after removing the shield, acceleration of heroes, as well as the dispersion of negative effects. The number of things that Julius can dispel is simply amazing, and many heroes with weaknesses and various controls become simply powerless against teams with this cat. Also, the more heroes in a team with him have their own shields, the stronger Julius himself and his entire team are. His shields can be layered endlessly, and it often happens that the attacking team loses by timeout, while a well-lined team with a cat in defense ends the fight with full health scales. Julius is very good not only in defense, but also in the offensive, because his first artifact with crit effect only strengthens the attacking potential of physic engineers. This cat is very good in all directions, and the lack of decent indicators of health, armor, and protection from magic is leveled by his abilities and future potential skins. Sebastian is the most influential hero, especially for true crit heroes, giving them an increase in the chance of a critical hit and additional net damage from crit hits. Without armor penetration, some crit heroes may not do any damage at all, but pure damage from Bard really transforms them. In addition, he is strong with a shield from ultimate, blocking stun and curses. Plus, at beginning of battle, Sebastian significantly reduces armor index of the closest opponent, making him very wadded for your damage dealers. Ginger is a fundamental engineering marksman of the 4th position, who allows himself and the entire path of progress to inflict additional physical damage from attacks, increasing to a maximum of 20,500 for 8 hits. She has little health, armor, and protection from magic, but all this is compensated by the general security in engineers as a whole, and physical attack of this machine gunner in combination with her 4th skill is at a decent level. Thanks to lead storm, she makes 7 shots, hitting all rivals, which works well against fans of spawning units. Ginger does this pretty quickly, and if her physical attack is reinforced by someone, so also if there is a distribution of armor penetration, then the thin heroes simply do not have time to do anything about it and cannot survive this barrage of fire. She also has passive skills that allow her to apply strong deceleration to all repulsed opponents, which brings her to the combination with Isaac. Judge is a support with ability to impose shields on the leftmost and rightmost ally. He has the most unpleasant control in the form of deceleration and stun, as well as ultimate with the same stun. He is very interesting from the point of view of strengthening tank of the first line and covering a weak hero in the last position who does not want to lose their health. Judge gained considerable popularity after the release of Julius, but even before his introduction, he was successfully used in magic teams. Elmir is a mystic sorceress with truly universal abilities that affect all three main characteristics of all heroes. Against intellectuals, she temporarily activates aura, protecting allies from magical damage. Against agilitiers, she conducts a fair deal, increasing their chance of crit, but crit himself becomes a failure, causing not 2 times more damage, but 2 times less. And for stringers whose health is less than 569,000, Elmir simply burns 50% of energy every 13 seconds. The cherry on the cake is her ultimate, very specific and very effective. Creates an individual pile of gold around each opponent with its own individual health. The more health of the victim with the help of their damage methods they manage to remove from it, the less damage they will receive. But as a rule, with interesting teams with control elements, it becomes not so easy to completely remove this gold. Such versatile Elmir's abilities make her a popular hero among many players. Georgian is a master of control, ultimatum support in each team, the main manipulator of energy, forbidding to recruit it with the help of an ultimate, accelerating the receipt with the help of a shield, as well as stealing it himself from each base attack, a set for all ages of the most odious hero against many teams. He is also known for his damage transfer, which does not allow the opponent's thin hero to relax on the last line. Although his abilities are associated with magical damage, he himself is a strength hero with a large reserve of health, which eliminates the chance for rivals to quickly kill him as an ordinary, subtle magician. A favorite of many players, I recommend him. Faceless, the name of this mage speaks for himself. He is impeccable in copying other people's skills. With the help of ultimate, it is because of this that there are countless bundles with him. In addition, he changes parameters of damage, treatment, etc., often for the better, because the copied ability has 240th level. Power Throw is the most spectacular control skill in our game, combining pushing away the nearest opponent and stunning his entire team. Faceless with increase in number of heroes will become more and more relevant, because the set of stealing skills because of this will only be replenished. Kayla is a warrior from Way of Chaos faction with extremely unusual abilities for an agility hero. Her concept is based on partial tanking before losing health. The second skill, called Acrobatics, allows her to jump into the middle of the opponent's team and stay there exactly until her health drops to less than 25%. If such a moment occurs, she immediately jumps back and begins to heal herself, and after healing, Kayla is ready to jump forward again. At the moment of jump, her inner flame is activated, causing unpleasant net damage to the surrounding opponents. But what is really interesting is her third skill, which causes considerable damage and imposes a blinding effect for a few seconds. This is extremely useful in battles against physic heroes, and in particular marksmen in the 4th position. Her ultimate is also no less interesting. With its help, Kayla swings her weapon, dealing damage to rivals around her. Hit targets lose health depending on the damage done, and Kayla herself increases her maximum and current health by this value. And if Aiden is dead in the allied team, she resurrects him. Kayla is already very strong even without skins. It's easy to imagine what will happen to her relevance next. And the last hero left in this review, obviously, is Aiden. He is the hero of supportive Path of Chaos, and all his abilities somehow relate to health. With an ultimate, he increases the current and maximum health of allies, forcing them to burn for the same damage value equal to the increase, which speeds up the process of gaining energy. This skill makes noticeably denser even for those heroes who already have very little health. Also, Aiden resurrects Kayla with an ultimate if she was dead at that time. It turns out that during the battle they can take turns to resurrect themselves endlessly, with the help of their ultimates. With the second skill, Aiden heals all allies, and chaotic treatment is 2 times more powerful. With the third skill, Aiden deals damage to allies whose current health is more than 80% and increases his own health by the value sacrificed by allies. It turns out that with the ultimate he increases health to them, and with the third skill the allied heroes themselves increase health to him. Accordingly, Aiden himself, from a magician with an average health value, becomes a fairly dense hero along with his entire team. But the shield from the last passive 4th skill deserves our special attention. Aiden, with a cooldown of 15 seconds, can create a shield around himself or around each ally with a current health of less than 30%, valid for 4 seconds and absorbing physical and magical damage. Durability of this shield depends on the total maximum health of all the heroes of the team. That is, the longer the battle lasts, the greater the strength of this shield. The beauty of this ability is that it is passive and works instantly, which saves in a number of situations. For example, when an ally receives a lot of damage in a very short period of time, for example, from Yasmine's ultimate. Plus, the use of Aiden is justified in conjunction with Julius. An additional shield from him will reset negative effects from the owner after 4 seconds of his action. So this support hero is extremely useful not only in chaotic teams, but also in many other magic teams. This rating is coming to an end. What do you think about him? Write in comments below. And I remind you that the best gratitude from you will be a subscription to this YouTube channel, as well as a like for this video. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me. I hope you appreciated this work, and it turned out to be useful for you. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you soon.